You have entered the AquaBrain. I'm your Virgil Drew. Before we start this show, I want to refer to the Webster's 1828 dictionary and look up the word pandemic. All people, incident to a whole people, epidemic. And then we're going to look up epidemic, a popular disease, a disease generally prevailing. Well, on the show today, we're going to talk SARS-2, aka COVID-19, virus gain of function, and much more. Make sure you wait till the end, where I ask a bonus hypothetical. My next guest doesn't like titles, but he's a wealth of knowledge. You may recognize him from Corporation Nation, Strawman, The Real Story of Your Artificial Person, Red Pill Sunday School, and make sure you check him out at Reality Blogger, here to talk about his new documentary series with the release of Wagging the Dog Part 1, the story behind the story of COVID-19. Welcome to the show, Clint Richardson. Hey, Clint, how the hell are you, man?
All good, man. Thanks.
Well, cool. So at the beginning of the show, I read a couple definitions out of the Webster's dictionary, and one was pandemic. And then out of pandemic, I found epidemic. And so I read that one. And so is the epidemic wearing the mask and the expectation of subservience, or is it the virus itself?
So it's a real virus. There's a lot of people. There's like this crazy, weird movement right now of people saying viruses don't exist, right? And that's like saying that something that NASA talks about doesn't exist. Yeah, absolutely. NASA says in all of its pictures, we've colorized this, we've made it look pretty, and we've added this and added that so that you can see what it is that we're talking about, right? And a lot of things are done that way for educational or appearances. So if I put a picture of a coronavirus up on the screen and it has this sort of perfect roundness with little suction cups,
Right.
going on, and people say, "Oh, that doesn't exist. HIV doesn't exist. This doesn't exist."
Right.
Well, no, not as it's pictured, because that's a diagram. They're not
Exactly.
going to draw like this weird looking thing that's microscopic and unable. Right now, you got to draw
Yeah.
it so you can. So now I can point to the nucleus. I can point to here. I can point to the little hairs. I can point to the receptors or the spikes.
Right. It's got to
Right,
be
male or
understandable.
female. Yeah, so I mean, yes, those don't exist. I'm gonna be the first to tell you that the coronavirus drawing doesn't exist. You're missing. I mean, what
Right.
the art of metaphor and the art of like simile have been completely lost on people. It's why people don't understand the Bible, or for that matter, most writings of history. Because you got to remember that most of this stuff, the best way to communicate is parabolically or metaphorically, using a story to tell the actual story, right?
Yeah. Allegories.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why it was written that way in history, because you really learn that way. I mean, it's really, you can identify to the story. So, yeah, when they're presenting that, yeah, it's a drawing. It's not real. Interestingly, though, when you do, you say, "What's a virus?" Right? Because
Right.
in the scientific world, they want you to think everything is like a computer. There's programs and viruses like a Microsoft virus. And they want you to think your body and your cells and everything is computer like, because that's the way, that's their religion. That's what they think, and they want you to think that too. So
Scientism.
they show you all of that. Well, if you go back into the old days and the old dictionaries, virus is defined as pus, virulent, contagious matter. For instance, the origin of vaccines, which will be in my next documentary, which will come out really soon because I'm almost finished with it, the first part.
Awesome.
Um, the origin of vaccines is it's really screwed up. And when you see it, you'll be like, there is no science behind vaccines. They used to strap cows down to a table, and they used to make a bunch of cuts, right? And when the
Right.
cuts heal, they pus over, right? They have contagious matter, and
Ugh.
they would and basically vaccine means cow. Vaca is Latin, I believe, for cow,
Spanish,
right? So
vaca.
vaccine actually in 1828, vaccine meant and is defined as the cow disease, the cowpox disease,
Okay, okay.
right?
Was that Jenner
Well,
or
yeah,
after him?
afterwards, but still, the religious aspect of vaccine, that's where it stems from. Is what they did and what Jenner did, Edward Jenner, is he looked at smallpox, which to this day they have no idea what it is,
Right.
no idea, and he said, "Hey,
Right.
cowpox and smallpox have the same symptoms."
Hmm.
Big, ugly pustules of pus, basically infectious matter, which is called virus. Another word for virus is venom or poison, right? So when you think of a virus, don't think of the circle with perfectly, like a child's toy or something. No,
Right.
we're talking. I mean, literally, we're talking about infectious matter, pus, right? So they dig that out of the cow or of the human, right?
Yeah.
And they would then cut your arm, and they'd use the same blade for everyone,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
And then they would stick the pus into your arm and call it vaccination.
And it's
So,
not funny. This is like,
I mean, it is really funny that we've fallen for it because we are
yeah.
stupid Americans, right?
Right. Right.
But that fad came from tribes, actually. Tribes were doing this, like Indian tribes in the Amazon and stuff, and they witnessed them doing this and they brought it back and it became a fad, and the queen was all about it, and it became sort of this fabulous thing to do, right? Well, and that's how it all started. That's how vaccination, that's the science behind it. Now, if you look at the current smallpox vaccine, right? It's a metal prong that they prick your skin with the same thing, except now the vaccine comes in a little vial with clear liquid. It's diluted, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they prick the skin. It's the same thing. It's just that it's now like streamlined to, but if you look at what they used to do and then look at what they do now, which is prick the skin with a sort of a fork, and on the fork is the vaccine, as they call it. And here's the kicker: I told you they don't know what smallpox is, but since cowpox is so similar to it, they use cowpox. There is no vaccine for smallpox. There never was.
Oh, jeez.
Amazingly, smallpox has no vaccine. Every vaccine ever made for smallpox is cowpox.
Well, isn't smallpox is probably a reaction to something else that's happening inside the
Well,
body.
there's theories like smallpox, cowpox might be cowpox with something else, or there's
Or like
the
scabies
point is
reaction.
the point
Scabies,
is the
something.
only honest answer that you're ever going to get from any of these people promoting this stuff is I don't know. Everything is experimental.
But you're a
Every
doctor,
drug,
so
every drug is experimental, man. When you get a vaccine, the FDA doesn't do tests. They don't do anything. All they do is approve the pharmaceutical companies who do their own tests. And they get rid of all the bad tests and show just the good ones. And then, only then, when millions, billions and millions of people get the vaccine, that's when they start actually doing the trial. Because you're supposed to, as a vaccine recipient, voluntarily getting the vaccine, an experimental vaccine, and they're all experimental, you are actually supposed to report any side effects to the NVIC, National Vaccine
Oh,
Injury
really?
Database. Yeah, you're part of the trial. It's
Well,
your
right. It's your
responsibility.
right. It's your right.
It's your right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted. Exactly. And I'm not in any way exaggerating or kidding. That is how it works. That is even Plotkin, Stanley Plotkin, when he testified, he's like the godfather of vaccines. When he testified under oath, he says, yeah, there's no placebo, proper scientific tests. They're never tested for safety and effectiveness until after they get out of the population. I mean, he says it,
Jeez.
and this is, it's all in my documentary, but the whole thing is so nuts that I can't remember at this point, because it's been 10 years, I can't remember even what it felt like to believe that a vaccine is a good thing, right? It's the cause of probably 99% of all health problems. I mean,
So Clint, as property products of the U.S. corporation, are we being experimented on?
At every turn.
I mean,
well, so, I mean, yeah, you got to think about.
I bring that up, Clint, because I have made it almost all the way, and don't ruin the ending for me, but I've made it almost all the way through your 9-hour documentary that you just released. And in there, you actually list out and mention a few cases of where the U.S. government experimented on.
Right. And that was to say, look, the idea, well, I mean, basically, the key takeaway to this is that there's this massive crime happening right now that is against both the Geneva Conventions on biological weapons and chemical weapons and against the U.S. Code written by Francis Boyle, the Biological Weapons Terrorism Act, or this big long title, right?
Sure.
And, I've pointed this out before to people, and this was even in my first movie, the first documentary.
Lethal Injection?
Yeah, about the law and how it works. And there's always the way evil people conduct themselves under the law is that they always put what's called an exception clause. So it's illegal to do this, except, right?
Yeah.
It's illegal to test on human subjects without their consent, except in this case, right? And the reasons they list in that law, the reasons they list as an exception basically cover anything: research, defense, peaceful use, right? So what they're doing in these labs all across the world, but especially in the United States, and it's being funded by the National Institutes of Health. That's the whole crazy. Fauci himself is the one signing the funding. That's the amazing part. You never hear him talking about it. But, what they're doing is they're creating biological weapons, and they're calling it basic research, legitimate research, friendly research, and peaceful research. Okay. Those are the exceptions. So if and they admit this openly, the guy from Homeland Security gets up on this panel and he says, look, if we were to do this in Homeland Security, which is the Department of War, right? We call it defense. Yeah. If we were to do this as the government military agency, there is no possible way that we wouldn't be accused of creating biological weapons. But because research scientists are doing it for the National Institutes of Health, it's okay. They're doing the same exact work that we would do in the military, but we're calling it friendly and we're calling it peaceful. It's not for war, right? Now, the concern, of course, is what's called dual use, which means dual use of concern, research of concern, meaning that what they create over there, guess what? They're publishing it. Anybody in the world can get that information. How do you create highly pathogenic bird flu?
Oh, there you go.
It'll take a couple of years to genetically sequence it all, and then we're going to publish it so that anybody with the right equipment across the world in their garage could reproduce it, basically.
Oh,
and now that's what they're doing. So yes, it's peaceful, but everything they're doing, the military has access to.
There was a word.
And he also admits they do the same thing. So
yeah, I was going to say there was a word, they called it something, and I can't remember, but there was like, function? It was like, Well, but it was like backyard biologist or something.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I was like,
Well, yeah, and you notice
what?
the contempt they have for everybody but their little group of scientists, right? And
Yeah.
everybody else, we're all just the scum of the earth, and it's their job to protect us and to bring us into transhumanism and all this stuff. I mean, it's nuts. This is a cult, and it has taken over the entirety of government, the agencies, institutions, universities, and again, that's all going to be in my next series. But it's a eugenics cult because genetics is just code word for eugenics, right? You look at
Right.
eugenics, the old tree that had all the different parts of eugenics, there's genetics right there. Most important part of eugenics is the notion that you could create whatever type of child you want, right? Just by altering the genes and they're already starting to do that stuff, right? So
Yeah, boutique babies or
yeah, and
something,
so
right?
what you're finding is that the worst possible viruses you can think of are being made even worse. They're being turned into biological weapons. They're being patented because now they're novel or new.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not
yeah.
in nature. You can't patent what's in nature, but if you change it a little, you can add a
Oop,
patent to it,
it's mine now.
right? Yeah, and then in order to do research on that, let's say it just happens to get out, well, guess what? Oh, you can't do any research on that without my permission. And to get my
Oh
permission,
God.
I'm the patent holder. You're going to have to pay me to do research, right? There was a big
Yeah.
thing on that with breast cancer, BRCA5 or whatever it was. If you have that gene, you're probably going to get the cancer. No, that's not how it works. But people believe it. So the company, what do? They patent the cancer and then say, well, you can't do any research to cure cancer unless you come through us, right?
Right.
That's it. You look at the
Hmm.
university system.
Man.
University system, their number 3 or 4 goal is to educate. Okay,
Oh, really? Just
their
three
number
or four,
one,
huh?
their number one, maybe number 2 might be sports
Okay.
franchises and
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Number 1 though, which is billions, billions, and billions and billions of dollars, patenting.
Wow.
That's what universities do. They're constantly in patent wars. And again, I'm going to show all this. That eugenics started in the university system. All
Huh.
this stuff. It's amazing history.
Wow.
But the the takeaway again is that you've got now, and this was warned about back as early as the 1920s. I know C.S. Lewis and all these different people were warning that there's this cult, this religious practice that's coming in to all the institutions, especially the science institutions, and they have a belief system. It's a religious belief system called it Scientism.
Hmm.
And I'd never heard that word. But boy, when I looked into that, I'm like, oh my God, that is probably the most important word I could have ever found in my whole journey because it represents just about every bad group you can think of, right? Because it's essentially anti nature. In other words, we want to rebuild everything in our own image. We want to
Hmm.
recreate a patent and then eliminate the original. That's like their goal. That's what
Wow.
transhumanism is, right? That's what
Yeah.
futurism is. That's what machine interface and all this stuff you hear about. It's nuts. And if you really want to get a handle on what's coming and what these people plan, because you, my friend, you and nature and everything in it are just collateral damage for what
Right.
they intend to create. Think of those scenes in the Matrix movies where all the bugs are artificial, right? They're little computer generated things and nothing, there's no nature anymore. There's just machinery transposed with biology, right? Well, that's the kind of thinking that's behind all of this gain of function research because in the background, they're doing all of this transhumanist oriented stuff, which essentially is creating synthetic biology, synthetic life, and synthetic environments inside of you so
Jeez.
that their technology can live within you. You can interconnect with it biologically because they believe you're nothing more than a freaking computer. You're nothing more than computer programs, right? Everything in your mind is in your mind. There's no soul. There's nothing. It's the worst kind. It's like anti God in every anti nature, anti like true religion in every possible way, and it's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. Now I've been looking at it for a year now, and so my passion about it has died down a little as I'm constantly making this movie. But when I first started this, I'm like alarm bells sounding everywhere because we're talking about the end of life. We're talking about
Yeah.
if one of these biological weapons, not that we're calling it a biological weapon, it's called a dual gain of function
Gain of
research,
function. Yeah.
and they've taken Ebola, they've taken already highly pathogenic H5N1, for example,
Yeah.
which cannot be spread from human to human. Guess what? They made it spread human to human. Okay, kills 60% of the people who get infected with it from an animal or a bird, from the bird to the animal to the human. Well, that's not good enough. What happens, even though in nature it can't happen? What would happen? What would it be like if it actually spread from human to human? So what do?
Let's find out.
Right. Well, this is what coronavirus is. Okay. Now, Ebola is a coronavirus. The common cold is a coronavirus. There's a lot of coronaviruses. Corona is the shape
Ah.
because it looks like a crown, a corona, a crown,
Okay.
right?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, even the Corona beer has the little things that look like the coronavirus, right? It's got the crown, which is Corona, with
Yeah.
the little things, and there's a ball at the end. Well, that's what the receptors or the spikes look like on a coronavirus in your common cold. It's very simple. It's very virulent, right?
So
So
is
what
that
do
what
they
the
do?
tests are? Is that what the tests are looking for?
Well, they took
I mean,
they
are they
took
looking for the
SARS.
crown?
Well, this is just so in the lab as friendly, peaceful research, making biological weapons that are supposed to stay in the lab and never escape. Right?
Yeah.
They took coronavirus, which SARS one, right? The first SARS that came out, which they admit escaped from a lab. So SARS one was a biological weapon. MERS, same thing, Middle East respiratory syndrome. It's a coronavirus that has gain of function. Okay, gain of function means okay, the coronavirus bats carry it, right?
Right.
I'm not going to get it because I eat a bat or because a bat bites me or any other reason because our receptors, right, our male and female connection points for communication don't that I have a triangle and my communication is a square. It doesn't
Huh.
fit.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what they did is they took the coronavirus and they added or gave it a gain of function. So now the coronavirus, which is only infectious in bats and possibly into other animals, which is the only way, again, like bird flu, it would actually transfer to a human. They added orthologs, meaning spikes, ways to communicate with or infiltrate and deliver your payload, right? So
Yeah.
what a virus basically does is it connects to your cells or to your proteins or to whatever it's designed to do. It can be anything that's viral, in other words.
Is the virus alive?
That's debatable. It depends how you define life. It's part of life. You wouldn't be
Oh.
alive without your prenatal virome, which is transferred to you by mother's milk or placenta, right?
Mhm.
So you've got all these different viruses in you that your body then recognizes, and that's why you can create antibodies against them,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
So
So they've engineered it.
so yeah, they've taken it. So how do I make SARS more infectious to humans? All right. Well, one way I can do it is how they actually did it. What they found in these studies is that they found HIV spikes, human immunodeficiency virus spikes, unnaturally attached to bat coronavirus. Right. The reason it only stays in bats and anything similar to a bat is because we have receptors. We have receptors on our cells or whatever, and the virus is able to then connect and deliver its payload. Now, that's not a bad thing. In nature, you're actually supposed to get things like chickenpox, measles, right? You go back and you watch the
Yeah.
Brady Bunch or all these old shows. Measles was considered a great thing. Kids got to stay home from school for a few days, right? There was
Chickenpox parties.
no problem. Measles was wonderful, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly now it's this deadly disease. Well, it's not. You're actually supposed to get it, right? That is sort of mother. It's like Microsoft delivering an update to your computer. It's Mother Nature delivering an update to your epigenome. Epigenome, the genome is your genes. And then, like, okay, think about your garage door, okay?
Okay.
You've got a remote control for your garage door.
I
Why
do,
is it that why is it that your garage opener only opens your garage?
because I've set the
The
things.
epigenomic switches.
Oh,
So your genome is
interesting.
is that
Okay.
big, but your epigenome, you see, I can have unlimited possibilities in my genome, which is why you have all these different life forms, because I have on and off switches. I can turn one switch on to express cancer, or I can turn it off, depending
Hmm.
on what I give you. If you eat, for instance, something sour, apricot seeds, they give for cancer. The
Okay.
reason it's preventable, or they say it's preventable for cancer, is because it's going in and it's switching on and off epigenomic switches, millions
Oh,
of
gotcha.
chemical switches. Right?
Yeah.
This is metaphoric. So now when you press your button, now that I've switched off one button, your garage door doesn't respond anymore. Neither does your immune system, or neither does whatever it is in your body that fights cancer, right? You've
Yeah.
turned those switches either on or off to express genetic uh, actions, right?
Right. And
So,
if you're interested in this, there was a WHO memo, I think 1972, I think, where they actually wrote all this out. They did studies on, I think it was cobra venom or something, where they hit that switch, turned it off, loaded the subject with a bunch of poison, essentially, where they didn't show anything, and then they turned that switch back on, and then of course the immune system started attacking the body. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
right, and that is they call that, depending on the situation, they call it an autoimmune disease. Auto meaning self, right? So if I inject you with anything that's animal or human derived, right? So we know
right.
that they grow vaccine cultures on human aborted fetal tissue or insect cells or cow blood, cow serum, right?
Yeah.
So you're actually getting, and the labels actually warn you that you're getting those proteins because they can't filter them out. You're getting those proteins within the vaccine. Now, what that does is it causes your body to fight that foreign sort of thing and
Yeah.
creates antibodies against it. But the problem is those those cow or monkey or whatever, they're so similar to your own uh, things that your body produces
Right.
that your own immune system starts creates antibodies to attack the foreign protein, but it starts attacking your own.
Huh.
Right? That accounts for so many disease states that it's incredible. Again, in my documentary that I'm working on, but for instance, this is a great example. This was in my first movie, Lethal Injection. That's how they sterilize horses and
Huh.
people, but specifically horses. Um, they inject pig ovary, little microscopic mushed up pig ovary, into the horse. It's called porcine zona pellucida is the official name of it. It's just the ovary of a pig. And because
Huh.
the horse ovary is so, or the horse sexual organs, the the horse's immune system recognizes that as a foreign object, but it's so close to its own that the antibodies that are created stop spermatogenesis,
Jeez.
make the sperms retarded, um,
Man.
stop the so they the crazy thing and the crazy number when I saw it back then, I was like, oh my God. Um, you always hear about decreasing the population by 90%, right? The elite
Mm,
want to do that,
sure.
apparently. They have a 90% success rate of sterilizing horses with that shot. And guess what that shot is? It's a
Huh.
vaccine.
All right. So the bonus hypothetical, Clint. Um, okay. So your parents are, or your sorry, your parents, your partner's on board, and you're having a baby. What steps are you taking to protect your child?
See, that's a loaded question because it depends on your mindset. It depends on how much vested do you have in the system. What do you want for your child? Do you want
Right.
them to, I mean, that is such a deep subject, but I'll answer it this way.
Okay.
You have only two choices, and that is to follow in your parents' footsteps out of ignorance and place your child into a birth certificate situation. And what happens with the birth certificate is that it creates, if you will, from its statistics, or is created a status in society, a person, it's as if the monopoly board exists, and suddenly that birth certificate creates a car, and now your child is constantly going to grow up as the car, not as
Huh.
himself or herself, right?
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind that without the car, won't be able to get a driver's license. Not that you'd need one because you're private. You won't be able to show ID. You won't be able to do a lot of things that are considered public. But then again, there's a lot of things. Those you don't need those things. So what would I do personally? I would withhold. They're going to ask you because hospitals get paid to
Oh,
to get
interesting.
to get that information, right?
Yeah.
That's why they're constantly, hey, what's the child's name, for instance? I haven't decided, and they hate that answer. They're pushing and pushing because they're going to get a lot of money for collecting all of your child's quote unquote information, right? Information
Yeah.
is artificial.
Yeah.
What's the legal name going to be? Well, if there's
Huh.
no legal name, pretty hard to create a legal person, right?
Yeah.
Um, Pretty hard to assign a social security number. Pretty hard to assign all these different things. And the thing about those things that get put upon us after the birth, for instance, I mean, the worst one is social security, because it's like signing up for a retirement,
Like
what do you call it, a
401k
pension
or
fund,
pension.
basically. Because the way the law works is that if you're going to receive a payment eventually
Mm-hmm.
from some investment, well, then you're bound by all the rules that go along with that
Oh.
investment. And if you read, I mean, I wrote an article called "Social Security is the Mark of the Beast" because the part section 666 in the Social Security Code actually speaks towards children and
Huh.
how all of this works. If you want to look, I can send you the link. And
Mm.
it's freaky to read how much control they get over you by, just like a company would have control over your money and your fund and everything, and it can do all these things, and it gives you unemployment, gives you benefits, but it also takes and gives you all these obligations. And you have to, like an employee at a company, you have to follow that the rest of your life in order to get paid at the end of your
Hmm.
life. And because of that future benefit, you're stuck. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
get their social security out. They're like, I paid for it. I paid
Yeah.
into the system. And
Right.
that is the great sort of, the kind of worm dangling at the end of your life. You're probably going to die before you ever collect it. And if you do collect it, it's by the time you get there, it's not going to be enough to support you. So the whole thing, in my opinion, it was set up as a Ponzi scheme where, every year the fund for the Social Security goes up and up and up and up. But if you look at what they're funding there, it's basically all debt.
Oh, great.
Okay, because, well, don't look down on debt if you're really evil. Uh, Debt is how people make money. This is how billionaires are made. People invest in debt. You look at all the government comprehensive annual reports, their audits. you're going to see all their investments are in debt instruments. Because think about it. I can buy a $1 million loan that's worth 3 or 4 million by the time all the interest is paid. Now, if I buy that $100 million loan, I now have an asset worth $4 million that I can borrow against.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Right. So you
Yeah,
do that a bunch of times. It's called hypothecation. That's what they did with mortgages. Oh, well, I'm going to give you a $200,000 mortgage, and then I'm going to immediately turn around and sell that to another bank, right? Meanwhile, what's happened is I've just created a ledger entry that says $200,000 magically exists. I give you the cash, and I have basically a document that says this is worth $600,000 per the terms of your contract to pay interest over 30 years, right? Now I can sell that to another bank for anywhere from 50,000 to 600,000, depending on how, what you're trying to do. There's some, by the end of the Ponzi scheme, you've got these banks or corporations set up to buy the bad debt because it's going to go bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, bank one sells it for 300,000, bank two sells it for 400,000, bank three sells it for 500,000, right? And they're making money the whole time. This is how everything works. This is why debt is so out of control, because that's how people become billionaires, and that's how government has basically spread all throughout the world. Well, it's the same thing with your Social Security. All those instruments that make up that, I don't know, $4 trillion fund or whatever it is. I need to look at it again.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's all debt.
Wow.
So there's nothing backing that except one thing and one thing only: the faith, the good faith and credit of people to pay their debts. Now, if people figure out this scheme and they say, well, screw that,
right,
I'm not going to be involved in this madness, to the point where everything's going to be debt and there's going to be nothing real backing anything, that's what you're putting your kid into, basically, right? So a system that is designed to, no matter what he does, no matter how successful you are in the matrix, none of it is real. None of the money, none of the property, none of it is real. It's all paper. It's fiction. It doesn't actually exist. Now, the property itself, the house and the car and those are real things.
yeah, the
But you
physical
see,
aspect.
as a person, you don't own anything. Everything is owned by government, and you're an agent, right? So you're basically submitting your child to a life of mental and physical slavery, because you're saying, well, you're going to get protections from government. Congratulations. But with protection, the law says with protection comes subjection. You can't have protection from any king or magistrate or whatever unless you agree to being protected. And
what are those?
All have dual meanings,
Yeah. And what are the gosh, I remember in your book, you broke it down. What were the protections to be seized and what was punished?
You can actually post it on the final file if you want, or put up a little text. It's section 1981 of Title 42. And it has to do with equal rights. Well, when you say equal rights, the last thing you want, and see, this is the hard part for people to grasp, the last thing you want is equal rights, right? That means no matter, again, how special your child is, they're going to bring them down to the common denominator, so that the bottom of the barrel, right, is going to be equal. So what it really means is you're equally punishable under the law. That's what equality is in the legal realm. Consider the legal realm like hell. It's like the opposite of reality, okay? So when we say equality in reality, I say you're my equal brother, and in whatever, in arms, in Christ, whatever. Great. I actually mean it. But in legality, I mean, by calling you an equal citizen, I'm saying you're equally punishable under the law. So what does it say? It says 1981, Title 42, you are all persons have the right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted, the word is
That's
exacted.
exactly.
Exaction means I can take something from you that is not my due.
Right.
So when a police officer writes you a ticket for a bad parking job, he's exacting from you,
His
right? And
those are
when you
your
look that up,
rights.
it's extortion is the
Yeah.
meaning of the word. So those are your rights. And see, this is the problem. Let me look at something real quick here. I want to read something.
See, this is the bonus. This is the bonus material. This is what you get when you stay to the end of the episode, everybody. Just keep that in mind.
So two quotes, all right? Just so people understand, when the country was started, those men who started it they considered themselves as free men under God, right?
Okay.
That meant that, and according to the laws at the time and the laws of England, that the Bible is actually the common law. It's what you'd call the moral or spiritual law. The problem with that is that it can't be enforced. I found out the hard way when my neighbor put an outhouse across the street for his workers to because he was doing this little big huge project redoing the whole
Well, that was
thing, and
nice of him.
he put this outhouse right there, it right in my view. People were stopping by and using it,
Right.
and we asked him several times to move it, and when he didn't, we went to the city. The city gave me a very important reminder of everything I've already learned, which is, hey, and this is what he said actually, and I was really surprised he was so honest because he said there's no law against being an asshole.
Ah,
Move your outhouse back to the back of the property where nobody can see it. That's all I'm asking. Nothing more, nothing less.
yeah.
Right? Absolutely not. Mess, just makes a mess everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the truth, you see, because these guys, when they formed this country, they knew there was no law against being an asshole. There was no law against not being spiritually motivated or having morals. What there is a law, uh, uh, is the stuff we just talked about. The that you can be extorted and that you can be this, but that's a contractual thing. When they started the union of states, which means people, private people, um, here's the kind of thing that they're quoted as saying, and this really clears up a lot if you understand what's being said. Thomas Jefferson, he said, "A free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature." Nature is just code word for God, okay?
Right. Right.
God is a generic term
Existence.
for Jehovah or nature or existence, right? A free people claim their rights as derived from the laws of nature and not as the gift of their chief magistrate. All right, that's coming from the guys who was a chief magistrate, right? He's the
Yeah.
guy who created the whole, the framers of the Bill of Rights did not purport to create rights. Okay, so he's telling you right here. This is William Brennan. He's telling you that the Bill of Rights doesn't give you rights, right? They designed the Bill of Rights to prohibit our government from infringing on
Mm,
rights and liberties presumed to be pre-existing. And see, this is
yeah.
the problem that we have with Americans, stupid Americans, right? Is we have no idea that there's no such thing as actual rights. In other words, what the Constitution does is protect the rights you already have, right? So if you put your child into a corporate structure called the United States, which is in a district in Washington, D.C., that is not one of the 50 states, so it's not part of the union that they created that the Constitution is
That's
over.
important, everybody.
Very
That's
important because
important to know.
you're not party to the Constitution because you're a person of a foreign entity. The United States is foreign to all the states. 50 states united, then there's the United States, which is not part of that landmass or that thing. And so the United States spills over by putting that monopoly board over everything for its own citizens. So when you get a birth certificate, here's what happens. All right, my child, me, when I was birthed, which is what
Right.
a ship does when it comes to dock, it gives a manifesto and it's a certificate of entry. I'm entering into the country. It gives me domicile. Okay, and domicile would be where your law comes from.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
As opposed to God or nature, my law, in other words, my highest law now comes from the United States. Okay. Birth
So what?
certificate means you go into the United States and domicile, and you're a resident, in other words, a temporary resident, right? When an alien moves to the United States, so called alien, they get temporary residence. Well, that's what you get in the state because you can move from state to state because you're a United States citizen, right? And you get all those rights we just enumerated,
Right, right, right.
but they're not God given rights. They're not self evident rights. They're not anything that the Constitution recognizes. They're called contractual rights.
Okay.
With citizenship, with this personhood that you're putting on your child, the one that, same one that was put on you again through ignorance,
Right, right.
right? Generational ignorance. You are putting your child into that structure, that corporate structure, which exists for men that cannot govern themselves through the laws of nature. When they finally did a study between vaccinated and unvaccinated children, which is getting harder and harder, they actually had to use homeschool children because those are actually people who give a shit about their kid, right? Which is another thing I would do for my child is homeschool.
Yeah, yeah.
So these children over here in the vaccinated group, hey, great, no whooping cough, great, they didn't get measles or they didn't get whatever. These children over here in the vaccinated and unvaccinated group, oh, sure enough, higher statistics of disease, right? The diseases they're being vaccinated for, whooping
Right,
cough,
right.
measles. Well, yeah, because you're supposed to get it. These children got the disease, but they got it through the vaccine, right? So they didn't express the symptoms, which means that if you look at the rest of the spectrum, everything else that's happening to these children, five times five times the chance to get autism, five times the chance to get any what they call ADD or any
Sure.
of those types of things. So for every one child that might get autism on this group, five of them will get it here, but they don't get whooping cough, right? Which
Yeah.
or measles, which lasts a week, right? So you're getting all you when you look at every other disease that happens to this child, and then you go back and you look at these early doctors and their quotes, and they're like, look, I don't know how to put a finger on what I'm seeing in these children, but the vaccinated kids that are coming into the hospital or into my office, they're all sick and they're sick with things that children shouldn't be sick with, right?
Huh.
My vaccinated kids are all horribly, horribly ill, malnutrition, they're smaller, they're not as strong, they're not as
Oh,
smart,
interesting.
right? So all
Yeah.
of this has to do with the fact that yes, you're preventing one disease with a vaccine, not permanently, right? Not as if it gives you a temporary immunity. All you're doing is giving someone the disease, but the disease is not strong enough in the vaccine to actually express the symptoms. Sometimes you get the symptoms, they call it a side effect, which is just a main effect because
Right.
your
Getting
body's
it. Yeah.
fighting the disease. No such thing as a side effect, really. Um, so what you have is this sort of big general uh, population-wide logical fallacy that vaccines cause immunity or prevent disease. And in fact, it would be illegal for a vaccine manufacturer to label that a vaccine prevents disease or causes immunity because that's not what they do. That
Right.
would be a lie, and the lie would cost them a lot of money. So they don't make those claims. You read a vaccine insert, they're very clear that might not work. Might not do this. It might not do this. We don't make any claims. They're the whole thing is just it's one big freaking lie after lie after lie. And because it's vaccines, the backbone of the pharmaceutical industry, they're so profitable. You have former and future pharmaceutical uh, lobbyists and employees, basically managers, board members, going in and out of government. So naturally, they protect the lies because
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical companies then benefit from the unelected official who's in charge of all this stuff, and it's just this vicious circle that's been happening on such a constant basis that it's built into The vaccine thing especially is built into such a phenomenally huge lie and a faith-based uh, kind of thing for people that you can't even talk to some people about it. You can't even offer evidence to people about
Yeah.
anything
You
revolving
don't want
around
to
it.
see it.
And I know you've experienced that. Everybody has.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no way to ever say that a vaccine is good because when you look at all the facts, when you look
Yeah.
at all the studies they
Big
ditch
picture.
because it's got too many, too much harm or too many casualties. When you look at the full picture, not just some soundbite or you know some famous person saying vaccines are bad. When
Right.
you see the entire structure as it is. Do you think I could do that in 2 hours? Absolutely not.
No.
But what I can do is break the mold and say, look, either remain brainwashed or be somewhere in the middle where you think you know, but you don't really know. Or here's a master class that will tell you everything you possibly need to know, all sourced half the time from their own mouths,
Yeah, that's
right?
important.
So in a way, I'm breaking the mold, but at the same time, that mold it's already broken. It's not working.
Yeah.
Something is not working. There's no movement in the truth movement. It's stagnant. It's dead. It's nothing is happening. And if anything is ever going to happen, the first thing you have to do is be informed. You have to have the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Before you can act, and especially before you can act with any justification, especially if you're going to, claim that I'm acting under God's law, under the law of nature, protecting nature and keeping, this whole movement of futurism and changing the life as we know it into, some defense advanced research project. We, you have to have the knowledge first. And so,
Yeah.
am I asking too much? I mean, did you go to college? Did you take a 40-hour class, 50-hour class? Are you going to binge watch Game of Thrones, which is 120 hours? Are you going to maybe you could give up some TV time, a couple hours a
Yeah.
day? What is it going to take to actually get people educated to the point where they have that, like I said, justification to actually act and say, you know what? There's a point where the legal law you see the legal law for what it is this giant protection for really bad people. And
Right.
there's a point, even the legal law, even the founding fathers were like, hey, if government gets out of control, you have the right to take it down. And that is something we got to talk about, right? Because that sounds treasonous.
Well,
You ever heard the terms de facto and de jure? It's important to understand that when we're talking about the United States in Washington D.C., what you're talking about is everything we see is the illegitimate or de facto government.
okay.
Okay, the founding fathers, as they are called, right? The false gods. They they are the du jour. They are the
Okay.
lawful people, right? They're the ones claiming God given rights and creating a constitution and a union to protect already existing self evident rights, God given rights. Okay.
Gotcha. Yep.
So that is a legitimate endeavor. No matter what you think of those people, I personally think they were scum. All right. Slaveholders, right? I don't,
Sure.
but they did have a legitimate purpose, a legitimate interest. It is the same interest that you and I would have. Okay, because we all want to get out of this system. I mean, everybody wants to escape the matrix. Nobody knows how. Well, they did it. Now, whatever the reasons were behind it, no matter what the actual history is, they did create something, whether it was under the king or outside of the king. They
Sure.
created this thing, right? And it was legitimate. And they called it Congress Assembled.
Okay.
When Congress is assembled, in other words, when statesmen, men from the states, state means people, it's not the geographical area, it's the people that are private under the Constitution that are in a union together to protect their God given rights, right? That's what it's all about. But then later on, and they wrote about this, warning about this, the administrative state was created, right? In other words, the corporation was created. I
Oh,
want to say
really?
1812, 1813 or so is when they started talking about and warning about the administrative state, kind of like scientism has infiltrated into everything. These guys, these corporateers have created their own government. And so it's very important to understand that all of this that's coming down the pike is part of the illegitimate government. Now, it's
Mm.
also important to understand that every government in the world operates in the same way. It is not at all unusual or even bad necessarily that a a people create a corporate structure, if you will, to manage the affairs of what they're doing. It's when that then takes over. When the illegitimate takes over the legitimate, then you have a problem. Right now, the illegitimate government is obviously way out of control,
Sure.
right? So that's our major problem is that we are all connected through that birth certificate process to that illegitimate government, and that illegitimate government in the United called the United States or United States Incorporated
Yeah.
is essentially our we're in a voluntary servitude
Guardianship
type of
or
situation, so it's master and servant,
hmm.
principal and agent, right? So
Yeah.
we are essentially employees of that corporation, and because we're as an employee you don't have much right. You're
No, you don't.
administered.
Right.
You're not going to your boss and saying, it's my God-given right that I get a 20-minute break, right? You don't. It's just that that's the kind of rights you have as an
Yeah.
employee, right? So you you have this illegitimate structure, which we all, again, you're taken out of the state, out of the people. We the people are we the states, right? And you're put into that corporate structure, the illegitimate structure, the de facto structure, and therefore you are controlled utterly. And if they tell you, as a person of the United States, as a political status, basically, you consider the person, like I said, as that little car on the Monopoly board, the avatar, the thing that you're acting as and getting all the rights. That's all attached to the person, the status. It's not you, right?
Yeah.
You are
Right.
playing the part. So when you're driving the car on the Monopoly board, you have to pay, or you collect 200, or you have to go to jail on behalf of the person, right? Because you're playing the part of that illegitimate persona in Latin means mask. You've got the mask on, you're wearing it, you're volunteering, you're getting the benefits, and therefore you have to take the obligations. Your rights are to be put in pain, punished, tax, license, and
Right.
extorted. You must therefore be vaccinated in order to continue operating the car.
Okay, so
That's in the
this brings
monopoly
me,
rules,
yeah,
right?
so
The
this brings me
illegitimate rules.
to what do you see for those people that don't want the chip or the vaccine or the all this transhuman agenda that's the groundwork has been laid. I mean, it's these companies have made this stuff, right?
This is the Brave New World model. I mean, this is the cities of technology where people voluntarily give up just about every God-given natural right they have and become part of the collective, the Borg, right?
Yeah.
Or what else do you have? You have outside the domed cities, you have the savages. Okay, you look at the word savage; it doesn't mean what you think. Savage just means wild. Wild means of nature, right? You want to be wild. That means being free. Actually, it means being part of nature. Or you could be civilized, cultivated, part of the matrix, right?
Right.
Now that is very important because the matrix is a very important. The acting is horrible. The movie itself made to confuse, not to enlighten. However, if you understand all of this stuff, then you see it's a metaphor for the legal system. All right. We are in a legal matrix, right? The
Sure.
rules the rules of society are legal, right? That's like computer code. It's like a simulation. Well, if you look up simulation in the dictionary, all it means is hypocrite. See, there's no simulation, there's no matrix program. It's all in here. This is very important. You are the source of everything. You volunteer. You are the hypocrite. You are this what's called the simulator. A simulator is defined as a hypocrite. Okay. The difference between a hypocrite and a simulator, a hypocrite knows that there is a law that they're breaking. A simulator has grown up in a society where their forefathers have been so indoctrinated that they don't even know there's a natural law, a law of nature. They don't know, but we're still at the point where we're truly on
Yeah.
the side of being hypocrites, and our children now are being indoctrinated to become simulators, which means they don't even have a clue about what the
Right.
Bible says or what the law of nature is. So what's important about the Matrix is that when the script was written in the 90s, we didn't have all this internet stuff. We didn't have all this social media stuff. We didn't have virtual reality. We didn't have any of that. And it was
Certainly not the way
written
it is.
and it was written as a voluntary thing. People plugged into the Matrix voluntarily and they stayed there.
Right.
That's the difference between what they put in the movie. Oh, you're forced, barrel of a gun. No, everything is your choice. And
Right.
that's the
Volunteer.
most important thing about anything is that everything you do, even if there's a gun to your head, it's still your choice.
Right.
Your choice to act and possibly die or conform and do really evil shit. It's your choice.
Okay.
So it is your choice to walk away from all of this, or it is your choice to join voluntarily this brave new world matrix society, which is going to require of you all the things that before you said are lines in the sand. You're going to have to become transhuman. You're going to have to be vaccinated with the new type of vaccines, which are transhuman vaccines. Anybody that's thinking about taking this COVID vaccine, it is not a vaccine. It is RNA synthetically built to reprogram your DNA. That is what this is. This is not a vaccine. A vaccine implies that you have a piece of cowpox in and you inject it into someone's body. There is no COVID-19 in the vaccine. There is only synthetic RNA that they built in a lab, and they're going to put it in your body. It's going to connect to your DNA. It's going to reprogram it. And who knows? It's experimental.
Yeah.
No idea what the downside of that is. In other words, if I've got a billion different points on my DNA, and I change one thing here, down the line, that's going to change a bunch of other things.
Right.
And that's the problem with technology like CRISPR. You don't know the errors it's going to cause down line, right? So great, we're gonna prevent COVID somehow by changing your DNA, but we don't really care if that affects the entire human race from now on. They might, you could change one thing, and humanity itself will eventually be changed because of reproduction. That mutation that they've just introduced, that RNA turns into DNA. The DNA is passed down, and then it goes to everybody. See, this is insanity, but this is the sociopathic transhumanist sort of agenda. They don't care. Your collateral. Nature itself is collateral damage. They don't care. They want to be gods.
Yeah. Do you think these presenters, I mean, you put a couple in your video. Do you think these presenters that are pushing this stuff on TED Talks and stuff like that, do you think they believe what they're talking about?
I would say yes, because I've met people who just worship the idea of immortality or anti-aging stuff. I mean, right now you got to think of it this way. Women, especially, women are way more susceptible to this type of propaganda because it's all about the myth of beauty. the
True.
myth of youth, the myth of all these things, and that's a very feminine quality, right? So yeah, I don't know, there's no offense meant by saying that. You've got women right now without even contemplating it, and some that do contemplate it but just don't care, that are using makeup products made out of aborted fetal tissue. Right? They're using products that specifically use human babies, the cells regenerated, processed, cloned to create Revitalift or
Right. And you
you know
never
all you
know.
and they and you watch them, they're putting it on their face.
Yeah.
You're smearing basically, dead baby on your face. Yes, I believe that people chasing that type of myth, the beauty, the anti-aging, the
Mm,
immortality type of things,
yeah.
I think there are some people out there that will do anything
Wow.
you present to them if it means the possibility of in the future being able to transfer your consciousness to some fucking computer. Now, that to me sounds like hell.
I was gonna
That to
say that
me,
sounds
that
terrible.
to me sounds like the real hell. I'm trapped in a computer. My conscious is trapped in a computer. I don't really, I don't know if that's even possible, but that's what their goal is. And
Right.
I
Right.
can
Yeah.
never die. I am now alive forever. Does that sound like a good thing to you?
No, I mean, and that's why I brought it up. Like, do they believe this? Because I'm listening to him talk, and I'm thinking this sounds terrible. Like, how can you?
It's it. Well, I mean, and that's see, this is where the Bible comes in because when I started reading the Bible for what it was, which is a book of law, a book of law. There's nothing more or less to the Bible than a book of law, right? It warns against every single aspect of what we're talking about. Don't corrupt your blood. Don't put any, animal parts, and you're injecting shit all the time into your body.
Right.
Human growth hormone, people are now taking because it actually does work, but at the same time, it's going to give you cancer probably down the road, right? All these different things that people are doing, not really. What the Bible really says is that you will start, you will be made to worship that which you should hate, you will love, and that which you will love, you shall hate. Right? By all intents and purposes, no one should be falling in love with transhumanism, and yet there is the Transhuman University, worldwide organization, millions of people involved and just waiting for their chance to become immortal and to do all these to transfer their consciousness to be something other than God created them as, which again the Bible says, look, you are nothing but what you are. Be who you are. Protect. What is the meaning of life? People ask that all the time. People feel lost. And I figured out a long time ago the meaning of life is life itself. You fools.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Protecting the purity of yourself, your children, nature, that is your purpose. And if you don't stand up, if we don't stand up collectively against those who seek to make us impure, transhuman, all that, I mean, we're talking about the destruction of nature as we know it. Again, I keep thinking of the Matrix because you had all those uh, fake insects and everything, just sort of the recreation of creation. That is their goal, and they're doing it. They're patenting it. I mean, it's.
So Clint, I don't think, it'd be nice if we could all collectively stand up to this, but I walk around my city here and I see majority of the people that are lockstep in line with
and
what's going on.
and what
And
does the Bible say? The Bible says, "Do not try to live amongst those who don't live under the law of nature, the law of God." It says, "Separate yourself." That's what a circumcision actually is. The Jews made it into a custom, but in the Bible, circumcision means separation. You're supposed to
hmm,
circumcise yourself
yeah,
from the cities. It says, leave the damn cities. It says it. I mean, they're going to turn corrupt. So it's when I say we get together, we organize, I don't even really mean that, because this is an individual choice. Again, it's your choice. You alone. Just because no one else is doing something, or I'll put it another way, what our parents, if everybody else is jumping off the bridge,
right? Yeah.
Are you going to? Right? Well, okay, if nobody else,
well, it depends, right?
If nobody else is doing the right thing, are you going to do the wrong thing?
I don't know, man. It's the
tough,
new normal, right?
Right, but
Well, Clint,
this is
okay,
what we're
so
facing.
then, right, I know. It's like, it's driving me crazy, man. If it wasn't for my aqua brain, I don't know, I'd probably be wearing a mask right now, trying to have this interview with you through the mask. So it's an individual thing. What are the steps to take in our own lives, Clint?
That's, people ask me that a lot, and I have to be honest, I don't know. I can only say that what we're talking about truly is a leap of faith. Like, the fact that we've been so entrained to think we can't live in nature, we're born into nature, and we die, we turn to dust in nature. The only time we feel right in the head is when we take a vacation, go camping, go into
Beach,
what makes you think that nature is this hostile place that you can't survive, that you have to have all these artificial things to survive? It doesn't make any sense. You need food, water, and shelter. That's
right.
all you need to survive. And that is plentiful, right? So that's number one, is to get over the delusion that you need what these false gods, if you will, these scientists, technologists have and it's important. Technology is not science. This is, science is a study of nature and the ability to live and understand nature. It's not to uncover the source of life. It's not. Science is not designed to uncover source, right? Science is designed, natural science, real science, the scientific method is designed to allow man to sync with nature, to understand how nature works. These people are interested in destroying the way nature works and its law, and going against its law in order to create artifice, art. Technology in the older dictionaries means art. Art is the opposite of nature.
Yeah.
Art can never be called nature, right? So as more and more technology comes biting on your nipping at your tails, and you're so tempted to join, the more technology you bring upon yourself, the more impure you make yourself, the more you're going to need them to support you. Okay, you're going to need their drugs, you're going to need their synthetic biology and this, and eventually that is going to become your mark, the mark that you're their beast. You can't live without them then, because your technology that you've infused yourself with, no matter how small, must be maintained by the gods that created it.
And that's key. No matter how small, right? Because they've gotten that.
And they're starting with that vaccine.
Yeah.
That vaccine has sparked so many transhumanism debates. I can't tell you. You got to look for them. But I mean, everybody in that realm, whether you're for or against transhumanism, is saying, look, this vaccine, this is the first time they've tried to introduce a completely experimental new type of technology. I can't even call it a vaccine. It is a vial full of technology, basically. Okay, technology is art. It's synthetic. I just want to get that through people's head. So the question then is, well, how do I escape, or how do I leave, or how do the truth of the matter is, what does Christ and Morpheus say? I can show you the path, but you have to follow it, right? Well, the path is clear. Walk away. Walk away. Yeah. That's all you got to do. Now, here's the problem. Along with the legal citizenship personhood, status,
Right.
even if you're a complete slave, even if you're a prisoner in the jail system and you've been there so long that you wouldn't know how to do anything else, right? Many, in fact, most people do not want to leave. They love their servitude. Aldous Huxley was famous for saying that.
Yeah.
People love the servitude. Why? Because with protection comes subjection. They're protected. They're protected in all of the bad things they do. The legal law is 100% opposed to God's law or the natural law of nature, right? So everything you do in the legal realm is artificial, okay? That's opposed to nature. It's art. We're practicing art all the time.
Right.
So the path is clear. Now, if you're asking for legal remedies, there's all kinds of gurus. All kinds of gurus. You can go and you get their paperwork, you pay them all kinds of money, you can do that. I'm not selling anything, right? You can do all this stuff, but see, that's just going to make you more entangled in the web, right? Freedom to me is not paperwork, constant paperwork declaring I'm this and I'm that. You're what government tells you are because you're acting in its property, its person, its status. There is that's the truth. There's nothing else. No matter what you say, no matter what you declare, no matter what you write, that is your lot in life when you're acting as a person of the United States. So the question then becomes, how do I stop? Well, you have to give up all your protections, all your security, right? All of the things that make you feel safe. What does the Bible say? They will destroy you. I'm paraphrasing. You will be destroyed when they tell you they're going to give you peace and safety. And that's what the Pope's telling you. That's what the government's telling you. We're giving you peace and safety, right?
We come in peace, right?
By endless war and all this. Yeah. So, right, it's all there. It's all written out in the Bible. That's what's so incredible. If you just put religion aside and read the Bible as a completely separate thing, be amazed at what the law actually is. Law is no artifice, no artificial thing, no status, no flattering titles, no this, no personhood. It says that over and over. No persons, do not respect persons. It's amazing, but you miss that because you hate religion, because religion is designed to take you away from the Bible.
Right.
And it does. People don't read the Bible. They don't look at the words and what they originally meant. And that's what I did, of course, with the books, right? But so you've got, it boils back down to choice, right?
Yep.
Do you believe that you are a person, or do you believe that you are a free man under the law of God, and that the law of God is highest, as Jefferson said, that your rights come from God or nature, and not the state, not the magistrate, not the president, not the Constitution, etc., etc. Remember, Constitution doesn't give any rights; it just protects the ones you already have. Well, I don't know anybody that's claiming God-given rights. Everybody says, "Oh, that's unconstitutional."
Right.
Which means nothing to a U.S. citizen because you're not under the Constitution.
Right.
So
doesn't apply to you.
You see that everything we believe that makes us free is actually a lie, because even the word free in the legal, every legal word is opposite to reality. So freedom in legal, do you remember what that means?
Franchise.
Yeah. Think about that. Just think about what that means. Like a McDonald's is a franchise, and it's free. It's in this little corner of town and it's free, but it has to do everything its mother corporation tells it. Right. It has to bear the mark of McDonald's, right? The magic M, right? It has to do everything. So it's not freedom. Agency is not freedom. You're a slave, but in legalese they call it freedom, which means franchise. So when you apply that, freedom of speech, well, what does that mean? You have a franchise of speech. That means they tell you what your freedom is. Freedom of religion. You have the right to believe whatever you want. But the court says you cannot act on your moral beliefs. You can believe, but you can't act on your belief. That's your freedom, your franchise of religion.
Thanks for joining me in the brain. We'll have to do this again, man.
Yeah, anytime, dude. It's always good to talk about it because otherwise I'm just gonna start forgetting. Because now that I put that movie out, I'm like, now I can rest, I can move on, But it's always good to talk about it. So anytime.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you know when we put new videos out. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Brain Aqua. This has been AquaBrainTV. Remember to keep your head up and keep those knees bent.